All right. Hello, Soul Warriors, and welcome to the show today. Nikki Myers, the founder of Yoga for 12 Step Recovery. Nikki, I am so excited to be talking to you today. There's so much that we have to talk about, and hopefully we'll get to it all. But just thank you for being here and sharing your message and your work with the Soul Feed audience and the Soul Warriors around the globe. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm delighted that you asked me to be here. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Mm. Yay. Well, let's jump right in because I have lots of questions. I'm really excited to be talking with you today. Um, just kind of to give a little bit of a sense of what really recently has moved me. I was actually watching Chelsea Handler's Netflix documentary series on Chelsea Does Drugs.
Yep.
And she threw out at the beginning of that documentary this fact that that 500,000 people a year are losing their lives to addiction.
Yeah.
And it just like hit me like a ton of bricks when I heard that, because I was just thinking, I was, that's a lot of
Oh,
people.
I'm telling you.
Oh, and I couldn't believe, like, how did I not already know that? Why aren't we dealing with this in a more like urgent way?
Right. Let me give you another little statistic on that. And it's an interesting one. And this, we're just going to put in opioid abuse and opioid deaths. This is just opioids. So we're not talking about all the rest of the other addictions. This is just opioids. In 2014, more people died of opioid overdose than car accidents in the United States. And the number increased. The 2015 numbers just came out and they increased. And so, I mean, it's pandemic. The whole thing is pandemic at this point. And so it behooves us all to pay attention.
Yes. Yes. Now, I want to talk more about that, and I can feel myself getting so excited to dive into these topics. But first, for our listeners who are just meeting you, can you let us know like your journey and path to arriving here now, and how you found 12-step recovery and how you found yoga?
Absolutely. And I'll give you the Reader's Digest version because it's for those of you who hopefully know what Reader's Digest is, a long time ago, right? So this is the shortened version of it. This is so.
I remember.
I usually, anywhere I go, and I don't care who I'm talking to, whatever audience it is, if it were the United Nations, I'd start out the same way. And I say, my name is Nikki, and I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a codependent. I'm the survivor of both childhood and adult sexual trauma. I'm a love addict. I'm a recovering debtor spender, and I'm a yoga therapist. I'm an MBA. I am a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is a specific trauma technique, trauma healing technique. I am the mother of 2 living and 1 deceased child. I'm a grandmother. I've actually become a great grandmother. I've been a business owner. I have a patent. All of those things are true. And I love to say them all in the same sentence. And I love to say them all in the same sentence for a specific reason, that all of those are who I am. What I've discovered is that when I deny, ignore, pretend, or repress one piece of myself, and then exalt and praise and all that another piece, then what I do is create a split inside. All of those things inform who I am in the world today. Absolutely none of them define me, but they all inform my walk in the world. And it's important to acknowledge them all. There's the Sufi poet Rumi, right, who had this, there was a line in a particular poem he did called The Guest House. And he said, welcome and entertain them all. You welcome and entertain them all, because all of those are parts of who I am. And when I deny them, I create a split. And the split is the antithesis of yoga. Yoga means union. It means reintegration, all parts of ourselves. So no matter what I do, I explain it that way. And I love explaining it that way. All of those are parts of who I am. And so the journey really began many, many, many years ago. I used drugs and alcohol from the age of about 14, really continuously, from the age of about 14 on. And the journey took me through things that are typical of that kind of journey. In the 12-step program, we say jails, institutions, and death. And I know all three of those, jails, institutions, and death. And the death part, jails and institutions, pretty self-explanatory. But the death part was the death of my own soul, right? In addition to the death of many, many people I saw that have perished as a result of addiction. And so in 1987, I found the 12-step program. And when I found the 12-step program, I'm so grateful for that. I walked in those rooms and I could barely put a sentence together. And I really did find people there who loved me so I could learn how to love myself. And very, very, very grateful for the 12-step program. And so, I was in that and worked it and all of that. And for the first 8 years, many things happened. I went back to school, and that was when I got my MBA. I got my kids back. Lots of great things happened in my life. And I started working for a software company, doing all kind of great things. Long story short, after 8 years, I had a relapse. I actually had traveled. I was in Europe doing some work, and I relapsed in Germany. And the funny thing, the actual relapse was in Germany, but after I picked up, I ended up going to Amsterdam. And the funny thing about that was that although I hadn't had a drink or a drug in my body for 8 years, in that moment, I knew exactly what to do, exactly where to go, exactly who to become, exactly how to talk to find my drug of choice all over again. In yoga, in a foreign country, and that still blows my mind when I think about it. In yoga, we'll speak of that as samskara, right? Those patterns, those habits that don't go away, right? We think they may go away because they haven't surfaced for a while, but they're very deep and they're still there. And so I ended up relapsing. I stayed in Europe for a while, finally came back to Boston, where I was living at the time. And I found my way back into the 12-step program, thank God. And that was when I refound yoga. So I had been introduced to yoga many, many years before that and knew that there was something there, but drugs and alcohol and men and sex were more interesting. So I kind of strayed away from yoga. And but I found my way back after that relapse. And it started with Bikram. So I started in a hot yoga class, and then I found Ashtanga. And I fell in love with the Ashtanga practice and a wonderful teacher. And that was when I really started getting deep into philosophy, into yoga philosophy and all of that. And so in the study of yoga philosophy, I started finding all these matches, all these things that, I call it connecting dots, that sounded a whole lot like the 12-step program. I read a book and I read something, I go, damn, that sounds like the 12-step program. And I read something else, damn, that sounds like the 12-step program. And so I decided at that point that I didn't need the 12-step program anymore, right? That I had yoga, and that was all that was going to be necessary for me. So I stayed clean for 4 years that way, and then I relapsed again. So I relapsed after 8 years. I relapsed after, that came back, relapsed after 4 years. And by that time, I was just like, what the fuck? What the hell is happening here, right? Because in that course of that time, that was when I had gone back to school, And I got straight A's in my undergrad degree. I got really all but one A, one B in my master's degree. So I knew I was smart. All right. I knew I really had some brights as far as that goes. But what I've discovered and what I know is that your intellect alone can lead you right into a coffin. It really can. You can think and speak and all that your way right into a coffin. And so, I discovered after that second relapse that what I really needed was to marry these two things. That the cognitive work that of the 12-step program coupled with the somatic work that we do in yoga, and how yoga addresses the link between them, what the link is between the cognitive and the somatic, was very necessary for someone like me to create what I call a sustainable platform for addiction recovery. That it can't just be about the intellect alone, right? It can't just be about any of those alone. That there has to be really a sustainable platform, really based in what in yoga we speak of, or what the Upanishads speak of as the 5 bodies. That the platform needs to address all 5 of the bodies that the yogis speak of in order for it to be sustainable. So that was, the last relapse was 16 plus years ago now. And it's been this whole idea of creating a sustainable platform for addiction recovery that really I assert has been the primary thing in my own recovery to really for me to create sustainability in recovery. Never forgetting that this is always there. So, I got to do the work, just like we don't get on our yoga mat once, right? We got to, we continue to do the work. So it all started out of that. And it was like when I saw that, you can't keep what you have without giving it away. So I really needed to, for me, offer it to others as well. And so it just all came out of that.
I absolutely love that, and love the links that you've drawn and connected between these two really powerful practices and programs, because it creates a more whole experience for, and for practitioners. And,
yes.
And so I'm wondering, like, what are, for example, like, what is one of the most profound links that you saw when you were uncovering some of these similarities in these two systems?
Oh, there's so many. In yoga, and this starts about Yoga Sutra 2, approximately 210, from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Patanjali starts talking about the kleshas, right? And the kleshas he describes as obstacles or seeds that really are what's underneath our disconnection, how we get disconnected from ourselves, from our environment, from others in the world, from whatever it is that we call divine, whatever it is that we call that sense of something bigger, right? We get separated from that. And Patanjali talks about the seeds of this disconnection as this model he speaks of as the kleshas. And the root of the kleshas is something called a vidya. And in Sanskrit, vidya means knowledge. And when you put the A in front of it, it means not, right? So it means not knowledge or ignorance, but not like stupid. It's ignorance like I don't know what I don't know, right? And when you don't know what you don't know, that's a dangerous person, right? That don't know what they don't know, right? So it means misunderstanding or misperception or false understanding, if you will, avidya. And I assert in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that is exactly, ultimately it is, we forget who we are. We forget who it is that we really are. And ultimately, that's the exact same thing that Dr. Bob and Bill W., who were the original founders of AA, which is the founder of all the 12-step programs, they spoke of as stinking thinking, right? They said the root of our problem right, is this misperception. The root of our problem, right, is this false understanding, this self-centered fear, all of those kinds of things, right? And it's the exact same thing that Patanjali was speaking about in the Kleshas. So that's one of the biggies for me that I keep thinking about that. But there's so many others,
And what is the for someone who maybe has been to a 12-step meeting or is beginning to deal with an addiction but hasn't done yoga, like what's the benefit of doing both together? Like I know you spoke to a little bit earlier, but like what's happening in our brains and our bodies that allows us to like heal more wholly through that?
Great question. The theme of why 12SR is the issues live in our tissues, right? And that if I just release it at the cognitive level and don't release what's being held, because your body knows everything. It's been recording things far beyond what you can remember, what is even memory in the mind, and it holds things. So the whole idea is to create a way that release can happen, not just at the intellectual level, but it can release at the body level as well. One of the things that we do in Y12SR is we create what we call, they're called the interventions, for lack of a better word. And they're just these little things that the idea is that we take them off the mat and into our lives. Tools that we can use when we feel a sense of anxiety or trigger or, any of those kinds of things. Just some things to bring us back to center. Because when I pause and I can stop and I can breathe and create space, then I have the opportunity to make a different decision than a decision, instead of just going down the path, the samskaric path of the way that I went down before. I can create space in order to make a decision to do something different. And so we'll use all these little tools, and they come from both the 12-step program and yoga. And I'll give you a little example. We use mountain pose. Right, so one of the base primary program poses of really any yoga practice. And we use mountain pose, and we relate it to a phrase that's often used in the 12-step program. And that phrase is keep coming back. They'll tell you all the time, keep coming back, right? Keep coming back, right? But what is it that we're really keeping coming back to? And how can I take that off the mat and use it in my life? Right? So we'll have people really find that sense of the mountain in mountain pose, rooting, connecting with Mother Earth beneath you, from the crown of the head, connecting with all the resource that's above, and feeling that sense in our body, what that at a sensate level feels like in my body. And that's what it means to keep coming back. That's what I want to keep coming back to. So, when somebody pisses me off at the CVS or whatever it is, right? I want to pause and keep coming back, right? I want to keep coming back to that sense of center, to that sense of connection, to that sense of groundedness that is in mountain pose, right? For example. And so we'll take a lot of the poses throughout the practice and create those kind of connections between them. Those lovely little phrases that you get in the 12-step program, and what that really means at the level of the body, right? Because your body's going to tell you first, right? So what that really means at the level of the body. So that's what we do.
And it's so powerful, because when I'm someone, I love to over intellectualize. I love to over understand. I can create logic around anything. But when I get on my yoga mat, there's certain things I can't deny.
That's right.
And so, and there's also certain connections to my center and my power that I can access that I can't quite access through my logic.
That's right. That's right. It takes so much longer to access it here than it does from here, right? And so,
Yes.
because a lot of it's so beyond words, right? It's beyond thought, beyond all of that. So
there was a time where I was studying some neurolinguistic programming, and I remember learning that the conscious mind can only think about 5 to 7 things at a time. And everything else is in the unconscious mind, is in the body, is in the tissues, in our cells. There's a whole lot more happening beneath the surface than we can just hold in our minds. And
absolutely. You know, I always think of this as a database that pulls out what's relevant to us. There's a whole lot of stuff in there, but it only pulls out what's relevant in any minute. And I had a really good example of this the other day. My daughter called me up and said, would you stop by, you know, the CVS on the way when you're coming to my house? And I said, what CVS? Now, I passed by that place, going to her house 10 million times. But because the CVS wasn't relevant to me, I didn't even recognize it was there, you know? And that's what we do.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, because the mind the mind wants to be efficient for us. But sometimes efficiency isn't what we need.
That there is more. There's something beyond that, right? And yoga is one of the pieces that helps us tap into what is way beyond that. Yeah.
So when someone joins a Y12SR program,
yes,
what does that look like from beginning to end, just kind of like structurally? Is it an hour? Is it 3 hours? Is it like choose your own adventure? What's that like?
I love it. I'll give you the answer. My teacher says, one of my teachers says the answer to everything is it depends. So
I love that answer.
I do too. It depends. Normally, they're from 75 minutes. The meetings themselves are for 75 minutes to 2 hours. And it kind of depends. These are done all over the place now. Right now, they're more than, it's just been this really grassroots thing. And there are more than 300 meetings going on across the country. And now it's even begun to spread internationally. So it kind of depends. The shorter meetings, the 75-minute ones and things like that, are a lot of times are held in treatment centers. So these are things that are done in rehabs and things like that. The longer ones, which is really why Y12SR was created, part of why it was created from the beginning. The idea is, what do you do after rehab? You know, now you got to come home, right? Give me some resources to deal with when I'm really in the shit, you know, when I get home. So that was part of the reason that Y12SR was created. And these are in yoga centers, they're in churches, they're in community centers, they're everywhere. And so the time just depends. Whatever the time frame, the meetings look like, and again, this depends as well. It's half of the meeting is a discussion. So just like a 12-step meeting, we'll have a topic and we'll have sharing related to whatever the topic. And the topics are usually something like surrender. They're principles of both the 12-step program and yoga, acceptance, awareness, gratitude, right? All of those kinds of things. So we have a topic, sharing related to that topic. It might be based on a reading. It just might be share whatever it is that you want to share related to that topic. And then directly after that, we'll have what we call a trauma-informed themed yoga practice that is themed in whatever the topic of the meeting is. So the meeting will be themed in gratitude if the topic's gratitude, or surrender if the topic is surrender. And part of it depends is it doesn't matter if it's the meeting, then the practice, or the practice first, then the meeting, right? When we teach facilitators, if you will, space holders for the Watchtower Center meeting, we teach them to gauge the energy of the space to know whether to do the meeting first, then the practice, or the practice first, then the meeting. You can do it either way. The big deal is that the two are combined, right? So you got the cognitive and the somatic done in the same session, in that same session. And so, so that's kind of what it looks like. And again, it can be anywhere. The ones I like, of course, are the longer ones. The ones I love I like the 2-hour ones, where we have an hour to talk and an hour to practice. But you don't always get that. You don't always get that. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. And it's so powerful. And I love that you have built into the program that flexibility for the facilitators to read the energy of the room.
Yep.
Because that can really make all of the difference sometimes based on who shows up.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing. So just a little bit more about addiction, because it's just such a thing that And one of the things that I notice about addiction is that sometimes we're in such denial about it that we're the last to know that it's something we're struggling with. So I mean, obviously, if someone shows up to one of these treatment centers or yoga studios, they've recognized to some degree that they have a pattern or a problem that they're wanting to solve or heal. But what about those of us who are listening who are addicts?
Yeah.
Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's a codependency
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely.
How do we begin to recognize, that ignorance? I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. That's a great question and a big one. You said a lot.
I tend to do that.
I love it. So I'm gonna get pieces of it, and anything more you want to know or anything you don't feel like I addressed, please re-ask. Just whatever comes up for you around that. I love that you mentioned the word denial. We'll oftentimes talk about denial as an acronym, right? And the acronym says I don't even know I'm lying, right? When I'm in denial.
Oh yeah.
When I'm in denial, I don't even know. I don't even know I'm lying, right? And that's an interesting one. It really is an interesting one. I will often tell people that one way to look at this is whatever it is, the substance, the behavior, if it's Facebook, if it's any of this kind of stuff, you do it and you know better, right? You do it when you really don't want to. That's when to start the investigation. Has this turned in? Have I crossed the path? And now what was pleasurable to me, have I moved past the middle path? And now I'm into addiction, right? And addiction can be, a lot of times when you say addiction, we think about this as drugs and alcohol, but it's so much more. It's so much more, right? When the yogis start speaking about attachment, really, that is what can turn, I get overly attached. And that is what turns into addiction. As a matter of fact, attachment is one of those kleshas that we were speaking about a little bit earlier. They take different forms. And one of the forms of that ignorance is I get attached, right? I get attached to something, number one, that's going to change, right?
Right. You think you can rely on that, but no.
It's going to take, my favorite thing, I put on my computer a picture of the earth, and I recognize that the earth, right now, we're standing on a rock that's spinning in space, right? Right this minute, right? So how can anything not change? It's spinning, right?
We're spinning around a ball of fire. I don't know what's more changing than that.
There's no more changing than that. Oh my God. So it's all going to change. But I get attached and I think, it doesn't change, or that I can create yesterday. I can create today if yesterday was good, I want to create today to look just like yesterday. So if you're like me, I'll wear the same clothes. I'll eat the same food. I'll do the same thing because I want today to be like yesterday.
Totally.
Which means I'm really not living because I'm too busy trying to make today like yesterday. So I will often tell people to watch, to just take a moment and watch. When we get to a point, again, when I'm doing it, when I know better, right? I'm doing whatever it is, I'm doing it when I really don't want to, right? That is the beginning of the investigation. Have I crossed the line? Has this turned into an addiction? Right. So, I'll start there. What are the consequences that are coming out of this? Right. What are the things that are coming out of this? And does it support what I say is most important to me? Right. We do this little exercise. What's most important to me? And does this activity, whatever it is, support what I say is most important to me? And if it doesn't, then I need to check it out. I need to do some investigation around one of those things. The other thing you mentioned in that is codependency, right? Which is a big one. And I often say that that's the base of my work. What I love to do, particularly now, a lot of the base of the work is around codependency. Even once the substance or the behavior is gone, right? There's this thing that sits underneath it. And I assert that it's what's at the root of any addiction. That when you peel the onion long enough, you're going to get down to this, right? This, what's called codependency. And codependency is a funny word. I'm not a big fan of the word. I wish there was another one. Because it's got all these, it's been bastardized, right? So it's got all these crazy definitions associated with it. And a lot of times when people talk about it, they think about it in relationship to someone else, another person. But we, particularly in 112 SR, when we work with codependency, the way we define it is the disease of the lost self. I lose myself, right? And anytime I look outside of myself for something that can only come from the inside, I'm in a codependent relationship with whatever that thing is, right? I'm looking outside for something that can only come from the inside. That's codependency, right? And so by that definition, every addict is a codependent, right? Because I look for the drugs, the alcohol to bring to me something that can only come from the inside. There are times I said, I was a debtor spender. I could shop. This was after using drugs and alcohol. I was done with drugs and alcohol. But I could get a hit off Nordstrom's, just like I got a hit off cocaine, right?
Because the energy just transferred.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I could get a hit and almost do the same thing. I come home, be in remorse, regret it, end up taking it back, and it was the same kind of behavior. Same kind of, because I'm looking for something outside, that dress, those shoes, all that stuff, to create for me something that can only come from the inside, right? So at its heart, what we're dealing with is reclaiming self, reclaiming our own selves, right? And that's the powerful work with this stuff. And that's why yoga means union. It is, bringing in all parts of ourselves, right? Yeah, it's the reintegration.
Yes, and it's that physical, emotional, energetic practice of just celebrating whatever is, or if not celebrating, at least experiencing whatever is.
Right. I've been in this pretty big study of the wisdom goddesses, Kali, and from the Hindu tradition, all the wisdom goddesses. So there's Saraswati and Tara, and all of them. But Kali is this badass, right? Well, guess what? She's here too. She's in here too. The whole thing about those goddesses is, all that kind of stuff is you're looking at what you're really relating to, what's already inside. They're not really anything outside. They're what's here, right? All of these things are a part of myself. All of these things are a part of who I am. So when I deny one, it causes chaos when I deny any of them. So it's reintegration of all parts of ourselves.
Yes, and it's so beautiful to see you embrace and be so joyous about all these parts of yourself. Because I remember when I was reading Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, and she was talking about her shame research and how shame thrives in secrecy. And one of the practices of shame resilience is to speak shame.
That's it.
And it's like, then that's how we get that power back. That's how I reclaim myself, is when there's nothing I'm not afraid to say.
It becomes neutral. And the Yoga Sutras talk about this too. That becomes neutral in that process. Now, again, it takes a lot. That's work. It takes some, you gotta really do some work behind that, right? Not to say it's easy, but the whole idea is that it does become neutral. And, I always say I can talk about today, because my path took me through street work, through commercial sex work, through prostitution, through the whole 9 yards, through in my days of drug addiction. But I can talk about that today like I talk about owning a Volkswagen Beetle, right? It's neutral. It just becomes neutral. And it doesn't mean anything more or less to me than an MBA or a yoga therapist. These are all things that inform this walk, and none of them define me, really. None of them define me. I'm so much more than any of that,
You're amazing. I love you.
I love you back.
Nikki, I want to respect your time because I know you're headed to DC soon for the Women's March. Yep. But before we go, I just want to talk about that for a second. Like this moment, we're right now in this transition out of the Obama presidency and into a Trump presidency. And I just can't imagine a starker difference.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are struggling to be neutral about that.
Yeah.
And so, I guess I'm just curious, like why you're going to DC, why you're marching, and maybe even the opportunity that you see possible in this time that we're in.
Yeah. I'm going because my voice is important, and I can recognize that today. And that's a big one for me to say, given what I just told you, I was one who tried to take myself out. I really tried to take myself out. I really wanted to. When I walked into the rooms, I was one of these hope to die drug addicts. I did hope to die, right? And that's not where I am today in this moment. And I have a voice, and it needs to be heard. And so that's part of the big reason that I'm going to be a part of this whole big thing in DC. I'm so looking forward to it. And the other thing, you were speaking about struggle in this, because I went round and round and round about this one. Boy, when the election happened, for a minute, I couldn't move. I couldn't believe really what had just happened. Even though I had a hit, it was going to happen. I couldn't believe what just happened. But now where I am with that is just like many other things in my life, I got to hold both, right? I got to hold both that, tell the truth about what is And what is from my perspective and everything I see, we're in a time where our voices are going to need to be heard, right? That we got to say, you know, up with this, I will not put, right? There's certain things that, you know, I will not put up with. You know, I've got to speak out, got to speak up, you know, and I got to hold the other piece. I got to hold both, right? That there, you know, I will often speak about holding both in this way. In my childhood, what happened, some of the things that happened to me in childhood should never happen to a child, right? They really shouldn't. And I love and adore my mother and father. Both things are true, right? So in this is kind of the same way. I gotta have this stability, you know, that yoga brings me, that all these practices and all this stuff brings me, so I can hold both. I can hold both, that some things should never happen this way, right? And what's going to change it is the love, right? What's going to hold it is the love. So I got to do my practices and do my work and do my prayer and do my, all that kind of stuff to hold both those things, to be able to hold, to create the container to hold both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And just something that kind of hit me was there are still people suffering and struggling and dying from addiction.
Yep.
But, you know, in the last 8 years and in the next 8 years. And so the work, you know, there's still work to be done, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
So just thank you so much for the work that you are doing.
I say one more thing in association with what you just said.
Please,
and
yes.
If I can do it, anybody can do it. So, you know, that's the hope. There's a hope shot. And the hope shot is, if I can do this, you know, it's accessible for anybody. And that's, you know, that's what we do with each other. That's what we do for each other.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you for being this inspiration and using your voice and creating Y12SR. I can say so confidently that I'm going to do this training with you, the next opportunity that I can. I can't wait.
Yay!
I posted something on Facebook after I watched that Chelsea Handler documentary, and I actually was connected with you through Kate Werning because of this post. I was like, addiction is such a problem, and I want to contribute to the healing of this problem that is so serious in this country. And the response has been overwhelming. People have been messaging me and asking, like, how can we come together and do something? You should check out this organization, talk to Nikki Myers. So I'm just kind of like listening to that, because my family lost a dear friend, someone who's just like 27 years old to a heroin overdose just a couple of months ago. And it just was a reminder that we have work to do. So, and leaders like you have begun the work for us. And so I can just say thank you from the bottom of my heart for you and for sharing this work with all of us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Shannon. Thank you for your work here. Oh, it's so important. Thank you. Thank you.
And enjoy the march. Go march for us.
Yay!
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Take care.